And let's see, we have a new member here, Mr. John Collins.
Combs.
Oh, Combs. Apologize. How do you spell that?
C-O-M-B-S.
Okay, Combs. In the Sun Valley General Improvement District. May we have a roll call?
Yes. Daniel Henderson. Michael D. Martini.
Here.
Bill Hauk. Michael Drinkwater.
Here.
John Enlow.
Here.
John Flansburgh.
Here.
Mickey Hazelwood.
Here.
John Martini. John Combs.
Here.
Dave Solero.
Here.
Mervyn Wright. John Zimmerman.
Here.
Harry Fonstock. Eddie Qualieri. Mylan Nagayan. Cindy Turchek. Ron Penrose. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Our next item is public comment. It's limited to 3 minutes per person. I have no cards and see no public that's interested in commenting. Next item is approval of the agenda. We have a motion for approval.
Move to approve.
Second?
Second.
Motion to approve the agenda in a second. Commissioner Flansburgh and Commissioner Enlow. The next item is approval of the minutes from the June 6th, 2018 meeting.
We have a vote on the approval of the agenda.
Oh, sorry. Yes. May I hear a vote on the approval of the agenda? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Sorry, I'm moving ahead a little too fast here.
Get her done.
Next item is approval of the minutes from the June 6th, 2018 meeting.
I move to approve.
We have a motion for approval from Commissioner Flansburgh. Second from Commissioner Solero. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
I abstain, I wasn't present.
Yes, and one abstention by Commissioner Combs. Motion carries almost unanimously. The next item is an item for possible action. Presentation of the draft 2016 Washoe County Consensus Population Forecast, discussion and possible recommendation to the Western Regional Water Commission to make a determination that the draft consensus population forecast for 2036 can be supported by the sustainable water resources set forth in the Regional Water Management Plan and possible direction to staff. Mr. Smitherman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's a couple of typos that I need to point out. In the agenda item, the population forecast should be for the year 2038. So I apologize for that. This is one of those things that we probably all read over 5 times and everybody missed it. The staff report is correct in the year, but in the staff report, paragraph 3, line 3, there is a statement that says estimated 20-year increase of about, it should be 106,000, not 160. So that was just a silly reversal of 2 numbers for me, and it turned out to be a lot of people. But the point was that the incremental increase over 20 years in the 2 forecasts from 2016 and 2018 are almost identical. So with those corrections in mind, I will start off with a brief summary of the 2018 draft consensus forecast. Damian Kerwin from Regional Planning Agency is here. Jeremy Smith is out of town, so his quite capable assistant, co-planner, Damian, is here to answer any questions you might have, because if we get down any further than what I'm going to report, we're going to need Damian, because I can't answer those questions. So what I will do is just draw your attention to the 2016 consensus forecast population that we looked at about 2 years ago. The growth rate from that consensus forecast and this one are almost the same. This one is just maybe a couple of tenths of a % lower. And I think this year is 0.9 something % growth. And then as I said before, the increment of growth from the current year, the reference year, and the 20-year out year is about 106,000. In 2016, it's probably closer to 107,000 for the 2018 consensus population forecast. But with those, you can see that the shape of the growth curve, the flatness, and essentially the shape and the outlying 20-year population projection are almost the same. So 20 years out, in 2016, the 2036 consensus forecast population was 548,159. And then for 2018, it's 558,746. So that is pretty much a continuation of the same growth curve. So from there, our important number that we're looking at is the 558,746 in the year 2038. That's what we have to compare with the sustainable water resources. And so, Jen, I don't have an advancer for the slide, so could you click that through for me? Okay, so in the adopted version of the Regional Water Management Plan, the 2016 version, we have identified 190,500 acre-feet of potentially available water resources. So that would include the 119,000 acre-feet that's available from TROA, and then in groundwater basins that extend north all the way up to the Smoke Creek Desert. So far more groundwater than we needed to identify, but this is just an artifact of where we started when the growth rate was a lot steeper back in the early 2000s. So Jen, can you click to the next slide? Thank you. So there is the 2038 population forecast, 558,746 people. And then Tumwa helped me with their latest water year. So this actually for the fiscal year 2018, and using their water use projections for all of Washoe County. So they base that on what their customer base does and then project it out into the rest of the county so that we cover even Incline Village and up into Gerlach and every place else in the county. And this includes people on domestic wells. The water demand for that number of people would be about 100,100 acre-feet. So this is a lower water use factor than we looked at 2 years ago, because from what Tumwa's economist Sean Stoddard tells me, every time we go through a drought cycle, people work on using less water. So, and when they fix that around their houses and businesses, they're usually fairly permanent fixes. So they may remove some landscaping, they may put in different fixtures that use less water, but our water use coefficients are down as far as Tumwa's customer class right now. So something that I did back in 2014, there was a meeting, I think it was a concurrent meeting of Washoe County, the City of Reno, and the City Sparks councils to talk about water resources and growth. And so I took that 190,000 acre-feet of water and looked at all the basins that we had identified, and I took the basins out. I subtracted the basins out that we're not currently extracting water from for municipal industrial uses. So those would be just the basins that are down here: Truckee Meadows, Pleasant Valley, Lemon Valley, both sides, Cold Springs Valley, Spanish Springs Valley. I might be missing one, but I think that's where pretty much our water resources are coming from, both from the Truckee River and the groundwater resources. And if we continue to convert agricultural and other use water rights into municipal industrial to the limitations that TROA allows, and we extracted the perennial yield for each one of the groundwater sources, we would have enough water to serve this. I think the number that I came up with is about 140,000 acre-feet. And so just with the basins that we're using for water supply right now, there's enough to supply us for 20 years. If we make those assumptions that I said, we can get all the perennial yield and we can exploit surface water sources and groundwater sources to the maximum extent allowable by the Truckee River Operating Agreement. So with that, I am comfortable with the recommendation that I left you in the staff report, which does have the correct year, and that advancing a recommendation to the Western Regional Water Commission to make a determination that this draft consensus forecast for 2038 is less than the estimated population that could be supported by the sustainable water resources as set forth in the Regional Water Management Plan.
Okay.
Thank you. Back to you for discussion, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, thank you, Jim. I have a question that, with regards to the approximate 140,000 acre feet that you came up with, it's, I guess, from the basins that we're currently tapping. My question relates to the possible decrease in water that may be available due to three items. One, increased evaporation of Lake Tahoe due to the increased water temperature, being that's one of our sources, I believe, for this water. The next item is the raising level of the snowpack, causing much less water to be stored in the mountains, greater runoff in the winter when we don't have enough storage to store it. And then lastly, the warmer temperatures and longer growing seasons that require more water in the spring, more water in the fall. So it seems that we just may need some type of note that would acknowledge that there will be possibly some decrease in our available water due to those effects. And what I'm hearing you saying is that as droughts occur, people are going to use less water, so there's a possibility, I guess, that everything will balance out in the end. Any other questions, commissioners? Yes, Mr. Flansburgh.
So, I mean, basically what we're saying here in this report is that the 2038 population will have a water demand of approximately just over 100,000 acre feet. We've identified that there's 140,000 acre feet in the current sources that we have, and our regional water management plan shows that by that time we would have 190,000 acre feet. So I think what you're saying is we feel pretty good and comfortable that we're very conservative, even with all the items that Chair DeMartini has brought up, climate change, those things of uncertainty that we have enough other resources that we feel pretty comfortable making that recommendation based on the conservative nature of the resources we have available and this population forecast for the next 20 years.
That's how I'm looking at it.
A good point. Yes, I was not looking at that, that number, so good point.
One thing I will add, just for clarification, I did include in those basins the Fish Springs Ranch importation project. I'm not sure if there's actually water flowing, but the project is ready to flow water if the demand comes.
Thank you, Jim. Commissioner Enlow? Did you
And
have
that's at 8,000 acre feet.
Yes, thank you.
So what's I'm sorry, but what's the timing of when do we need to get this to Regional Planning Governing Board, or?
It needs to go to the Western Regional Water Commission because they're the ones that make the determination this month so that it can go to the Regional Planning Commission for their adoption in September. That's the time frame.
I have an issue with a number that Tumwa generated supposedly, the 101,000 acre foot demand level that you say includes domestic well owners and IVGID and other water users?
Yeah. Basically how that worked is Sean took the Tumwa customer base. He said, we've got about 90% of the people in the county that we serve water to. So then he just added the other 10%.
I don't think he added them.
Inflated that. You don't think so?
I don't think so. Because our resource plan right now, our 2036 resource plan number is about 100,000 acre foot demand level.
Okay, well then, the way I understand it, the 2036 water resource plan used a higher per capita water
I
usage
can't
rate.
imagine it going down by 10%. Like don't recall ever seeing that calculation, John or Bill. I don't know if you ever saw that calculation, but the 100,000 acre-foot number, without seeing how he did it, appears to be too low. What was it the last time? Do you have what the,
It's about 116,000 acre feet,
yeah,
I believe.
then it's wrong.
I saw him do the calculation. I was sitting at his monitor when he did it, so
Well, he
I
did, and it's
understand that you
wrong.
might want to, that you might want to question it. But that number might go up by what, 10% then?
Well, if 2 years ago, it doesn't change the outcome, I guess, but I just have a problem that the number that we're using in the calculation, in the comparison, is incorrect. If it was 116,000 the last time, I could see a couple of a percent reduction possibly in Tumwa's demand factor, but it's missing, it looks like it's missing domestic wells, IVGID, and other users. That's what it looks like.
Well, it sounds like this is an item that is important as far as us adopting or recommending. It seems like we need.
I can make a suggestion.
Yes.
I can make a suggestion that you can make the required finding, subject to revision by Tumwa in their own calculations, if those calculations turn out to be different than what they are. And I think it can go forward either, if this is correct, with the 100,100 acre feet that we've been given, or with any revised number that Tumwa generates. And I think you could make the motion subject to that change being made if it's necessary, and it wouldn't change the outcome.
Yes. Is there a number that anybody can say is the maximum amount that it might increase by? If we knew that number that we were comfortable with, say it's 10,000.
Well, I think it's going to be close to what the number was the last time. If you're saying it's 116, it will probably be close to that. You're not going to have that big of a reduction in demand over 10 years. I can't see it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so.
Okay, well, I think it's worth following up.
Commissioner Solero?
I think we're getting a little bit off base with that. I mean, this is just a projection that was done to say, hey, based on this number, this is what it would take. But what Jim has given us is current water resource is 140,000 acre feet to meet a population of 558,000. I think we can make that finding today without that piece. I think this is just an example that Jim was trying to get us to say, hey, even based on this number, Tumwa thinks that this is the overall that it's going to be. What we're saying is, with this number, we've got 140,000 to support it, and that clearly can be supported. That's really what we're trying to say, is that the water resource can support the population forecast. Is that correct, Jim?
Right, that's it.
Would it make sense for us to simply suggest that we make a recommendation based on a 116,000 maximum, and if the actual number is less, that it come back? Or if it's more, I mean, comes back?
I would say you don't need to put in any numbers in your recommendation, but just on the basis that the comparison was approved last time, and the number was about 116,000 acre feet per year. So even if it's that plus 10%, you've still got plenty of room under the 140,000. And those are just numbers to give you confidence that you can make that recommendation. But the recommendation itself goes forward without numbers. The numbers are just part of the staff report to support the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Flansburgh?
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Okay. Any other questions first? Yes. Go ahead.
I move that the Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission advance a recommendation to the Western Region Water Commission to make a determination that the draft consensus forecast population for 2038 is less than the estimated population that can be supported by the sustainable water resources set forth in the Regional Water Management Plan, and a finding that the forecasted population can, therefore, be supported by such water resources. and a request for an update to the Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission be made at the next meeting on any revised numbers that we've heard here today.
Thank you. A second? Commissioner Solero, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, our next item is a report by the Nature Conservancy on the Lower Truckee River Restoration Project with possible direction to staff. Commissioner Hazelwood, please.
And Mr. Chair, we're at the request of this commission during our last meeting, it was requested that we have an update on the Truckee River projects. And our very own Mickey Hazelwood is here to give us an update on how those restoration projects are going along the Truckee River. So with that, we'll turn it over to Mickey.
Can you hear me? For the record, Mickey Hazelwood with the Nature Conservancy. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to present an update on the Lower River Ecosystem Restoration Program that the Nature Conservancy has been leading for the past 15 years. Does this thing work? Now it works. I don't need to go into the history of the Lower River for this group or tell you why the conditions required restoration, but I do like sharing this little graphic. We had a system downstream, cities Reno and Sparks, that have been highly impacted from alterations. We had a channel that had been straightened and widened multiple times over the years, resulted in incision of the channel. Does this thing have a... Yeah, okay. So we ended up with an incised channel, depressed local groundwater table, rapid die-off of native vegetation, invasion of non-native species. In order to restore a system like this, there's not much you can do to raise bed level and bring water levels back up to meet the floodplain. So what we're left with is removing a lot of earth from the floodplain to reconnect the river and the floodplain. Also restoring sinuosity to the channel to slow floodwaters and reduce that erosive energy. The benefits of this type of ecosystem restoration projects, of course, wildlife habitat enhancements, both riparian, terrestrial, wetland, and in-stream habitats. Of course, provide flood attenuation by providing areas for floodwaters to spread out, again, dissipate that erosive energy. Water quality benefits due to the nutrient uptake, nutrient assimilation of native vegetation, channel shading, of course, which have been lost, and oxygenation through the reintroduction of riffles, whitewater sections. Another benefit of this type of ecosystem restoration is to increase the drought resilience of a system like this. By reconnecting the river and the floodplain, we actually create groundwater table that's closer for vegetation, more accessible during extended periods of base flow and drought. And then the vast majority of the lower part of the river had no legitimate access to the public. It's all in private hands prior to restoration activities. And so now this is an area where folks can recreate. This program's been possible only through partnership at the local, state, and federal levels. Many of those partnerships are represented here on this commission. So I'd like to thank everybody who's been involved in these projects. If you're not familiar with the area we're talking about on the river, the restoration program extends from the upstream end is at Lockwood, property owned by Washoe County. Extends downstream to the lower end of 102 Ranch, which is where USA Parkway crosses the river. We've been working on this program, like I said, for about 15 years. We did a small pilot project in 2003 at Nature Conservancy's McCarran Ranch Preserve. It's basically a proof of concept. We had pretty rapid success with that project, and we started to move on. We were still moving earth as recently as early 2017. To date, we've done restoration along about 11 miles of the river, over 800 acres of revegetation. And like I said, requires a lot of earth moving to bring floodplain elevations back down to spring runoff levels where we get frequent inundation. To date, we've moved nearly 2 million cubic yards of earth on these projects. Measures of success for this work. We work with the Great Basin Bird Observatory, who does annual avian surveys for us. They're reporting to us that the number of birds and species diversity is increasing from year to year across the restored sites. And just this summer, we had the first documented willow flycatcher at McCarran Ranch Preserve on the lower river. First time willow flycatcher's been documented on the Truckee River in recent history. It's been many decades that bird's been absent. While we don't restore for any particular species, we are restoring ecosystem functions for the ecosystem services that they provide. We do consider this a mild success. This is a good indicator species, the willow flycatcher. Bird experts consider willow flycatcher to be one of the most difficult birds to restore for multiple reasons. One, the habitat diversity and complexity that they require, and then also regionally, that bird's been on the decline for many decades. Vegetation monitoring we do via remote sensing. We use satellite imagery, which is classified by vegetation type. We use this to do change detection, so we can look at change in vegetation over time throughout the history of these projects. We do this annually as well, and what we're seeing is, the expected increase in native species and outcrowding of invasive species. Nevada Department of Wildlife and the Fish and Wildlife Service work together to do electroshocking surveys on the lower river to look at the fish populations down there annually. They're reporting to us that fish numbers are actually concentrating in the restored areas. They're finding these healthy waters, and that in the 4th year of the drought that we just came out of, the restored areas were the only places that healthy fish were found on the entire lower reach of the river. They actually credited the restoration work with possibly saving the crash of the fishery down there. And then this past year, flooding was the first test we've had for how these projects would respond during high flow events. And as I'll show you with some pictures, they performed as designed. Just one example, I just drew a couple. I could show pictures all day, but don't want to do that. So just took one example from multiple sites. Here's an example of our vegetation monitoring results. Again, this is done with remote sensing. And what you'll see in the pre-project diagram, all these yellow and orange areas, that's all invasive species. This was old retired ag field that was completely populated with weeds. And what you see over time is a transition into these light green to dark green colors, which are all desirable species. You still have some weeds out on the perimeter of some of these projects where the ground is steeper and it actually isn't part of the floodplain. What you can also see from these is nice. We get the plan view of the river, so you can see how things change over time with sinuosity. You can see this old gravel pit that captured the river back in 96, 97, is actually narrowing over time, starting to function more like a river instead of a pond. Picture's worth 1,000 words, and I'm not that well spoken to start with, so we'll move on to a slideshow. Just again, pulled out one example. We'll look at Mustang Ranch over time. This is looking both downstream and upstream. For the subsequent pictures, we'll just focus on the upstream section, just again as an example of this restoration work over time. You can see in this particular location, the river was levied. It was actually straightened and levied with an earthen levee here, but you can also see the degree of incision that had taken place over the decades since the 1960s. This site in particular required excavation of approximately 5 feet across the entire site. This is 2010, immediately after earth moving was complete. Jumping forward to 2015, with revegetation starting in 2010, 2011, we were able to irrigate this site, and even through those years of drought, as you can see, by 2015, there are no irrigation lines on the site. We'd already pulled all irrigation out of there and weaned this site off of supplemental water. During last year's flooding, here's a shot. This is from January. This wasn't right at peak flow, but it was right after flows had started to recede. You can see pretty much complete inundation of the floodplain. Just one more shot, not showing up real well, but of the entire site. This is a little later. This was in February, so flows were down considerably, but we were still experiencing flooding. In this picture, you can see the constructed channel, the old channel, flowed straight along this course. You can see the constructed sinuous channel through the site. And again, pretty much full inundation of the floodplain. And then jumping forward to 2018, that flood did a lot of good for all these restoration sites. Had a lot of sediment deposition on these sites, and we saw really rapid response from vegetation. Just real quickly, this is a shot at Tracy. Again, we were moving earth here as recently as early 2017. So this is a shot of one little part of the project immediately before restoration. And then 1 year later, with the flooding that we had, you see a pretty rapid response by the vegetation. And then this is just a nice shot from McCarran Ranch. One of the things I like about this picture is, this picture's a few years old now. I think this was from 2015. Everything in the field division here, with the exception of this old cottonwood tree you can see in the background, this was all bare dirt in the spring of 2007. So again, these systems respond really rapidly once you restore those conditions and provide some seasonal flooding. So with that, I'll take questions, or you know where to find me.
Excellent job. Anybody have any questions? Commissioner Hazelwood? Yes, Jim?
Yeah, Commissioner, if just a private citizen wanted to go out and visit some of these sites, what's access like, and how would we go about going out and seeing firsthand what you've done?
All these sites are open to the public. Most of them have trailhead parking areas. So, you know, Lockwood is actually a small county park. There's a parking area there right off the Lockwood exit as you go downstream. The Mustang exit will take you to the Mustang Ranch project. There's a parking areas both before and after you cross the river, the bridge across the river there at Mustang.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
either side
I've
of the
seen
river
that one.
you can access there. From Mustang, the Tahoe Pyramid Trail actually goes from there all the way down to USA Parkway. So, you know, there's access through that entire reach, about 9 miles of restoration there that you can pass through. The McCarran Ranch Preserve, we have a trailhead off Wild Horse Canyon Way. So you can access that site from the south side of the river there. And then for 102 Ranch and Tracy, you get off at USA Parkway, take the exit that takes you down to the old frontage road, goes down underneath USA Parkway, and there are different trailhead locations there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to find. And we have some directions and things on our website for some of that stuff too. So.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Excellent job, Commissioner Hazelwood. Excellent presentation, excellent job. I think this river is a tremendous improvement compared to what it was back in 1990. So, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Jim, on this item, what was the possible action?
It is a possible action item, but that would be if you wanted to direct staff to do anything, like have Mickey come back in another 10 years, report on progress, or just to accept the report. If you wanted to make a motion, that would be my recommendation.
I'll entertain a motion regarding acceptance of the report. Commissioners? We have a motion to accept the report. Is there a second? A second by Commissioner Henderson. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? One abstain. Motion carries almost unanimously. Thanks very much. Okay, the next item is the program manager's report. Mr. Smitherman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have anything in particular to call your attention to that's out of the ordinary for the program manager's report. You can see that on the A side, we have projects that are underway. These projects end up on this spreadsheet, I think, once we've issued a purchase order. So if there's something that we've done a contract with and you're expected to see on here and it's not there, that's probably the reason. And we're also cleaning up the old purchase orders that for contracts that we're at 100%. So I think there's only one project down there, second from the bottom, that's almost 100% complete. So the rest of them, it looks like it's pretty well up to date. So good job, staff. And then on the flip side, you can see that we're still collecting money. So that's good. It just shows period one. So the first increment for the 1.5% has come in the amount of total amount of about $340,000. And so, but you can see that our budget is laid out on here as well. So there's not a whole lot to report on this at this time of year.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Jim? Seeing none, we'll go on to item 8, discussion regarding location and possible agenda items for the September 2018 meeting and other future meetings and possible direction to staff. Mr. Smitherman again.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Our next regularly scheduled meeting would be September 5th, 1:30, this room. I have 3 potential items that would be on that agenda. One would be a report on the Watershed Management Plan gap analysis that the Stormwater Permit Coordinating Committee has taken on, administered by the City of Reno. And then there would also be a proposal for the next phase in the Watershed Management Plan process. So assuming that that is ready to go, that would be on the agenda for September 5th. In addition, it's about time to hear from DRI on cloud seeding. So getting a report from them on last winter's cloud seeding activities, and then a proposal for the coming year. We do have $50,000 in the budget for that, so I think it'd be appropriate at some point in the fall to have DRI in to give their report. And then any follow-up that would come from a meeting that's scheduled this month for with the Western Regional Water Commission. So it's a little early for me to say anything about that one, but that is a potential for another action item for you on your agenda in September. And that would fall under the other future meetings. As you, I believe, know from some email conversation with Jen, that there is a concurrent meeting scheduled for August 14th, 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock, I think is the time frame. 10 to 2 in this building, in the caucus room upstairs. So, and that was requested by the Western Regional Water Commission.
So what is that again, Jim? I didn't. Is that a meeting
They requested a workshop.
Oh.
Yeah, with the Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission
Okay.
on
That's
August 14th.
August 14th, okay. Okay, is there any questions on this item? Is possible action? What type of action? Okay. Okay.
That allows you to request an item and vote on it if you want something that you have.
Okay. So thank you, and we're going on to item 9, commission comments. Any commission comments? Seeing none. Staff comments?
A couple. Want to thank Commissioner Hazelwood for an excellent presentation. I've been out there, I've been to that trailhead out on where the Mustang Road crosses the river, and I've been out on my bicycle on the Tahoe Pyramid Trail. And it's been a couple of years, but as going through the 102 Ranch, it's really amazing to see the restoration that's taken place from the ground level. So with that, I would offer any of the commissioners, if you want to join me on a bicycle out there, it's been a couple of years, I'd like to make the trip again, and I could probably round up a bicycle for you. So just let me know, and I would love to make the trip with any or all of you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. Any public comments? Limited to 3-minute time per person. Seeing none, we'll call for adjournment. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.